Greetings everybody, and welcome to my 7 Days to Die modding tutorial series. We are now on episode 3. In the last episode, guys, we added a couple of recipes into the game for the battery bank and the solar cell. Now, I've gone ahead and removed my one for the solar cell, but if you want to see what that recipe was in the last episode, then I definitely recommend going and checking that out. But we pretty much went ahead and started with our very first append XPath in order to add a new recipe into the game. Now, in this tutorial, guys, I'm going to show you a couple of things. What I want to do is I want to show you how you can adjust vanilla recipes in order to add or remove ingredients. So I think that's going to be a pretty good one to go ahead and do, because this will be using a little bit more XPath. We can go ahead and do it in the main recipes file first, and then we can go ahead and do it in the modded version, right? So we're going to go ahead and do it in the main one first, and then once we've done it in the main one, we're going to then transfer that to our modlet. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. So the first thing we're going to do is let's go and find a recipe that we want to change, right? So for example, maybe, I don't know, maybe let's say okay, there's terrain switches. Let's see if there's any like good recipes in here that we could say that's kind of not easy to craft. Okay, let's say for example, you wanted to the chair couch sofa here. Let's say you wanted to add cotton to this recipe here. So for example, let's say you wanted to change this recipe and add some cotton in to make this be able to be crafted. So for example, what you would do in vanilla, and this would apply like if you were doing A16 as well and modding it directly. If we wanted to mod it directly here, we would just add another ingredient. So say if we wanted to add, it's like resource, I think it's crop cotton. Yeah, resource crop cotton plant. Count, and let's say we wanted it to make 10 cotton to be able to craft this piece of furniture. So essentially this recipe right here, right, this couch sofa used to have these 3 ingredients, but now we've gone ahead and added a 4th ingredient. Again, we've appended an ingredient to this recipe. Now this should work in game. I'm not going to launch the game and show you that it works, because I know it'll work, because it's just something that I know will happen and be fine. But what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to make an adjustment like this using XPath in recipes. So essentially this is what we started with, and this is what we're going to end up with once the adjustment happens. Okay, now before we used an append XPath to add a recipe into the recipes directory, right? But now what we want to do is we want to add an ingredient to the recipe directory, like a singular recipe. But we also want to make sure that the recipe that we're adding it to is the correct one. So there's a couple of things we need to do. So first of all, we're going to come out of our append tag here. I'm going to go ahead and kind of format this a bit. And let's go down below here and give ourselves some room to work. So between the closing append and the closing configs, we're going to do another one. So we're going to go and open an append tag. And then what we're going to do is going to say XPath. Now this time, we want to add it to a recipe. Now the recipe tag right here is directly inside the recipes tag that came before it, right? So what we need to do is we need to go start from the root of the document, so /, which means start from the document root, and then we're going to go into the recipes tag, or I should say like the recipes folder, I guess you can call it as well, if you find it easier to visualize it that way. Now what we want to do is we want to go into an individual recipe. So like it would show on a folder structure, we're going to go / again, and then go into a recipe, right? So now what we can do is add ingredients to this recipe. So let's go ahead and for now, let's just close this out. And then what we're going to do is we're going to close our append tag, which has already been done for us. So let's go ahead and move this down here. And now the ingredient name that we had, if we copy it from before, we can go ahead and literally just add it right here. So essentially now this will add in now currently what it's going to do is it's going to add this to every recipe. Okay, because what we've done is we've said go in the recipes tag. So we're going to go right to the top so I can show you. Now this might break a few things, so I'm not going to launch the game again, but what it's currently doing is it starts from here, and it's then going to say, now that we've gone into this recipes tag, it's then saying go into any recipe file. Currently, it's going to go into every single recipe file and add an ingredient. So, for example, it's going to add cloth to a 4.4 Magnum bullet. It's going to add cloth to a 7.62mm bullet bundle. It'll add cloth to an arrow iron bundle. So that's not what we want to do. What we want to do is we want to find the particular name of the recipe, right? So I think it was the sofa one. Let's just type in sofa. Yeah, sectional leather. Let's use this one, sectional leather couch sofa block variant helper. That's probably the best one we can do. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that it only adds it to this one. Okay. Now there's one way we can do it, and the way we're going to do it is we're going to do an attribute lookup. Now, don't be alarmed by these words. I'm going to tell you exactly what an attribute is, just so you know what I'm talking about. So you can see in the XML document, right, that it's divided into different colors, okay? Now, the orange stuff here that I've got, it might be different for you. You might have it a different color background, but I've got it this way. The orange stuff right here, this is called an element. Now, an element is pretty much the name of a tag. So the opening or closing name of a tag is an element. Every tag will always have an element. Now, the next thing, the bit in white here, is called the attribute. So this is the name of the attribute, which in this case is just name. And then the stuff in quotes here in green is the value of this attribute. Okay, so this is the element, this is an attribute, and this is the value for that attribute. Now, one XML element can have 0 or more attributes. So you can have no attributes, you can have 1, or you can have 2, like this one. This recipe element has 2 attributes. It has a name attribute, and it has a count attribute. It also has inside it 3 ingredient elements, again with 2 attributes. It has a name attribute. In this case, resource leather is its value, and then the value of the count attribute is 5. That's pretty much the difference between elements and attributes. Elements are like the tag names, and then attributes is like the data contained inside those tag names. I hope that made sense, because this is what we're going to need to understand to make the XPath work. So yeah, elements in orange, attributes in white. Again, it might be different for you guys, and then the value of the attribute is this guy here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and do an attribute lookup. The way we do this is actually very simple. So once we're in so currently it's saying open every recipe element, right? And now we want to do a lookup. Now to do a lookup, we're going to open a square bracket and close a square bracket like this. So you can see now I've got opening and closing square brackets. Now, I want to look for the name attribute, okay? I want to look for a very specific value in a name attribute. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the at symbol. So so the at is pretty much short for attribute. And then I'm going to say the name. So now I'm looking for, right now what it's doing is it's looking for any recipe that has a name attribute. But what we want to do is we want to have a name attribute that's called exactly this. So we want to look for the name attribute called this. Okay, so what we're going to do is very similar. We're going to go name, and then we're going to go equals. And then in single quotes, because otherwise it will close out our double quotes, we're going to put the name of the sectional leather couch sofa block variant helper. Okay, so reading through this XPath is it just says go into the recipes tag. Now open every recipe tag, but only find those recipe tags that have an attribute name or an attribute of name whose value is sectional leather couch sofa block variant helper. So what the XML thing will do is it will come down here and it'll be like, okay, open recipes. Okay, I'm opening a recipe. Is the name sectional leather couch? No. Okay, next one. Is it sectional leather couch? No, so don't do anything. How about this one? Is it sectional leather couch? Yes. I'm going to do my changes in here. So essentially, it allows you to specify one of the recipes rather than having it add to all of the recipes, which is really, really good. So remember, always include the @ sign to look for an attribute. If you were to leave this off, instead of the attribute, it would actually look for an element inside the recipe tag, which we don't want to do. We want to look for the attributes inside the recipe tag. Okay. If you left the @ off, it would start looking. What it would do is instead of looking in this section here for the attributes, it would start looking at the elements down here inside the recipe tag instead. And you don't want to do that. So, for example, if I wanted to look for like some elements, I could do that, but you just want to have the attributes, which is the most important thing. And most of the time, you will be doing attribute lookups rather than element lookups, because you navigate to your elements and then you look up the attributes within those elements. Hopefully, what I'm saying makes sense. Hopefully, we'll see. Okay, so what this is going to do now is it's going to find any recipe that has the name sectional leather couch sofa block variant helper. So essentially, there's only one recipe, so it's only going to make changes to that one recipe. And now it's going to go ahead and add the ingredient to that recipe, right? So now it's going to add the resource crop cotton plant, and we want 10 of those to this recipe. So let's go ahead and see if this actually worked, right? So we're going to go into the 7 days game again. Which I think I was a doofus and closed down Steam. So let me go ahead and just open this up for me again. Open up Steam, and let's go to library and start the game. Here we go. Start 7 days and play. So now, if we load up our recipe, we should see, with any luck, that we have the recipe specified with the cotton as well. So hopefully now a sectional leather couch piece requires cotton as well as cloth. Hopefully, we'll see. So let's load up. Let's go ahead and click the F1 as well, just to make sure we got no yellow text. Doesn't look like we did, which is awesome. No yellow text is definitely a good thing. Alright, so we'll load up the world. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and check the sectional leather couch. So if we type sectional leather couch, here we go. Now if we go ahead and click on this, you can see that we got leather, nails and wood like we had before, but then we've also gone ahead and got cotton as well. Look at that. So now everything hasn't been added to cotton, just this one specific recipe has the cotton inside it, which is really good. So for example, the old couch doesn't have it in, which is really, really good. Okay, so that's pretty cool. But what we probably want to do is add cotton to this one as well, right? So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, let's come out of here. Right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add it to the old couch. So there's two ways we can go about doing this. The simplest way, I think, to understand would be to go ahead and grab this guy, copy it, and paste it, and then just change the name of the lookup here. So currently it's sectional leather couch, and it's probably going to be something else, right? Yeah, sectional plaid couch sofa block variant helper. So that's the name of this one. So doing this and replacing the leather one with this one is a valid strategy, and it will work. Now this is pretty readable, and it makes it very easy to see. However, there is another way you can do it. You can actually combine these two XPaths into one without having to do then all the rest of the work again. When you're doing an element lookup, you can specify more than one name. So we want it to be this or this. Now what you can do is you can say name equals this guy, or, and if you literally just do a space and type the word or, you can then add name equals this guy, right? So we can go and copy this entire contents of the square bracket, and we can do this or name equals this guy. So now we can look up two things at once. So we can say the name has to either be this one or it has to be this one. And if it's either one of those, add this in. And then you don't have to go ahead and do this guy. You can go ahead and just remove this, and then it will add the rest. It will add the ingredient to both of those recipes instead. So instead of having to do one at a time, you can do them both together in one XPath. Now there's certain advantages and certain disadvantages of doing it this way. The advantage of doing it this way is if you make a change, you only have to make it once. So for example, if instead I wanted it to be, I don't know, resource forged iron, I only have to change it in one place. The disadvantage is that it's not quite as readable. However, you can go ahead and sort this out. If you go ahead and do some line breaks like this, you can do this, name is this, or you could do name is this, and then you could do a couple of, you could do like a line break like this, which should make it a little bit easier to read. So if I do a couple of line breaks like that, you can see now that I've got the recipe whose name is this, or name is this, and it makes it a little bit easier to read when you're going through. So readability is very important, I would agree, but if you're looking to be to have it convenient for later, I would definitely try using or to specify multiple things, because that'd be really, really handy. Now, the other thing we could do is there might be times where you want to remove an item, right? So for example, say you found a recipe really, really annoying. I don't know. Let's say let's find a kind of annoying recipe with more than one ingredient. I don't know. Yeah. How about concrete mix? This is a good one. How about you'd say, I find concrete mix really, really annoying, and I wish that this guy here, this ingredient, was gone. right? So say we wanted to remove crushed sand. Now, usually what you could do is, if you just wanted to mod it from the vanilla file, you could come in here and just, delete it. But we don't want to do that, because that would be making changes to the vanilla files, and yeah, that'd be bad. So what we want to do instead is, currently we've been using an append XPath. This time we want to use a remove XPath. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. So we're going to go into our guy here, and we're going to come down here just before the closing config tag, and we're going to say remove. And we're actually going to make this a self-closing tag as well. We don't need this to be an opening tag. We're just going to have a self-closing tag. Now, remove just requires an XPath. It doesn't require anything else, just an XPath. So we're going to say remove XPath equals. Right. So now what we're going to do is, if we go into here, let's go and undo my changes here. We want to look up this recipe and then remove this ingredient. So just like we did last time, we're going to start from the root of the document. In this case, is recipes. So we're going to start from recipe. We'll start from recipes, and then we want to look up a specific recipe. So we want to find, in the recipes area, we want to find a recipe whose name equals, and then the name of that guy is resource concrete mix. Okay, let's go and just type that in. Okay, so then this is the one that we want to remove the ingredient from. Now, if we leave it like this, what it's going to do is it's going to go, okay, look for every recipe. Is this called concrete mix? No. Is this concrete mix? Is this concrete mix? Yes. But then what it's going to do is it's going to go, okay, goodbye, and it's going to take the whole thing out. We don't want it to do that. What we want it to do is we want it to go, okay, now look at all the ingredients and decide which one to remove. So we need to essentially go one level deeper. And we want it to go, is the ingredient crushed sand? Okay, goodbye. That's what we wanted to do. So what we're going to do then is, to do this, we can just go one file down the chain. So now in the concrete mix recipe, we're going to then go down and look for an ingredient. Now, if we just left it like this, it would keep the recipe as it is, but then it would go, is this an ingredient? Yes, delete it. Is this an ingredient? Yes, delete it. So essentially what it would do at this point, if I left it like this, it would just go goodbye, and it will remove all these things. But we only want it to remove this one particular ingredient. So this ingredient is distinguished from the other ones because it has a name attribute of resource crushed sand. So just like we looked for the recipe whose name attribute was resource concrete mix, we can look for the ingredient inside this recipe whose name attribute is resource crushed sand. So just like before, in the ingredient part, we're going to open the square brackets, and then we're going to put the @ sign. And then, so we want to look at the ingredient whose name attribute is resource crushed sand. Just like that. And then this should go ahead and remove that ingredient from the recipe. So now we can go ahead and check this worked, right? So now what we've done is, so this one, let's actually comment what this is doing. So this one is to add a new recipe. This guy right here is to add an ingredient to one or more recipes. And then this one is to remove an ingredient from a recipe. Okay, so essentially these comments should help you to see what this is actually doing. So yeah, so we've seen a couple of append XPaths. This is our first remove XPath that we've seen. So let's go into Steam right here, and we're going to go ahead and launch the game. And just check now whether this worked. Hopefully it did. So if we launch the game right here, I'm going to go right in here, and of course open up our world that we started before. And then once you do that, we should see whether this is going to work. So opening the world, let's press F1, make sure we got no errors. Looks like we didn't, so there's no XPath things coming our way. So then what we're going to do is we're going to look at the concrete mix recipe and see if it worked. Alright, so let's see. Concrete. Does concrete mix still require sand? It does not. You can see concrete mix now only requires stone and cement. We've successfully gone ahead and removed the sand from this recipe. So that's what the remove XPath will do. Now, sometimes there might be a time when you want to actually not remove an element, so you might not want to remove, for example, this whole thing. Instead, you might just want to remove an attribute. So let's have a look at a recipe, for example. Let's say, I don't know. Let's say we wanted to make hubcaps craftable in the backpack. To make this work, we'd need to remove this craft area attribute, right? So we need to remove this guy. So what we need to do to make this work is there's another type of remove XPath called remove attribute, okay? And this is going to allow us, because before the remove XPath will remove an entire element, so an element and all of its attributes. But if we just want to target one specific attribute, like this guy here, which tells us where it's crafted, we can go ahead and remove that attribute by using a remove attribute XPath. So this is going to, let's say, remove the need for a workbench for a recipe. Okay, so let's go and get this. Let's go and get this find window out of the way here. Okay, so this one is going to be called remove attribute, and then this is a self-closing tag. So we're just going to do a slash, and this, the only thing this requires is an XPath, right? So we're going to go XPath. Okay, and then open and close the quotes. Now, the XPath we need to use this time is we need to look in the recipes and find the recipe whose name equals resource hubcap. That's going to be the one we need to remove the attribute from. If we just did finding the workbench attribute from everything, it would remove workbench requirements from every recipe, which wouldn't be good. We just want it to be removed from the resource hubcap one. So let's go ahead and make the start of our XPath and then go from there. So first of all, we're going to look at recipes, and then we're going to look for the recipe whose name equals, and then in single quotes, if we go ahead and copy the name just to make it safe, resource hubcap. Right, so look for the recipe whose name is resource hubcap. Now what we want to do is you want to remove the attribute. Now, the attributes, the way you can access the attributes is like we accessed the level of elements down with a /, you can also do that for attributes as well. So what you do to do this is you go / just like you would go for an element, but then you put the @ sign, okay? And now instead of going ahead and looking down here, instead of looking in this section for the next element, it's going to look over here for all the attributes inside this tag. So now what we can do is we can just remove the craft area attribute. It doesn't matter what it's called, we just want to get rid of this craft area attribute completely, right? So now, if we go ahead and put just craft area right here, this XPath is saying, look for the recipe whose name is resource hubcap, and then find the craft area attribute, and then remove attribute. That's literally all this thing does. So now what will happen is if we remove this attribute, it will go ahead and say, remove the need for a workbench from this recipe. So let's go and save it, and let's launch Steam, and let's see if this worked. Hopefully it did. Let's launch it, and let's have a go, shall we? So let's see if this guy works. So starting 7 days. We're going to go ahead and let this guy load up again. And then we should, once my screen decides to turn back on again, for some reason I had a screen issue, continue game and go to our tutorial world. And now we should find that hubcaps no longer need a workbench to be crafted. Now, I know these examples might seem arbitrary, but these examples are kind of meant to get you used to working with, you know, the basic fundamentals of modlets, right? It's because you'll be using append a lot, and you'll be using set and remove attribute and things like that. You'll be using append, remove, and remove attribute probably the most frequently, and then set attribute is another one that I'll go through soon. But let's have a look at the hubcap now. So now if I look for the hubcap, you can see that hubcaps no longer require a workbench. I literally just need some raw iron, and I can craft them right here in my bag, which is really cool. So yeah, it can be used as part of a restaurant. It's great to be it's great to be a gearhead. Nice. But yeah, as you can see, this thing right here now no longer requires a workbench. So we've gone ahead and successfully removed that from the from there. Now the other thing you can do is, if you really wanted to, you can make it so that certain recipes don't have to be learned, right? So you could also remove, like, if you wanted to remove the fact that recipe has to be learned, then you could remove the tags, for example. So you could go ahead and remove, there'll be one called tag is learnable, and you can go ahead and remove that, right? So let's go and see if we can find an example just so I could show you. Let's have a search for it. Let's type learnable, because this would be a good one. So yeah, for example, military fiber, right? What you could do is, say if you wanted to go ahead and remove the fact that you needed to unlock this recipe, you could remove the learnable tag from the military fiber. And I challenge you to actually have a go at removing the learnable tag. So a little bit of homework for you guys is I want you to do a couple of things and see, just to see if you get your understanding of XPaths down a little bit and how this all works. So what I want you to do is try a couple of examples of each of these things. So the first thing I want you to do is add an ingredient to one or more recipes. Not to all the recipes, one ingredient to like 2 or 3 different recipes. Try a few examples like this. Then I want you to go ahead and remove an ingredient from a couple of recipes. And then what I want you to do for your last thing is I want you to look for the military fiber recipe and then remove the learnable tag from it. If you remove the chem station crafting tag as well, it doesn't matter. I just want you to understand how to remove the tag right here. So I want you to go ahead and find this recipe, resource military fiber, and then remove the tags attribute from it so that you can make it craftable without needing a schematic first. Just as a little bit of practice. I want you guys to try that out and let me know if you have any issues. If you do, of course, I'll be around to hopefully help you solve these things. And of course, if you have any other questions about recipes and things like that, then I can go ahead and walk you through those as well. But for now, guys, I think we're at a pretty good point to go ahead and end off this episode. So I'm going to go ahead and do it right now, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. In the next episode, we're going to start to move on to items XML. So a bit of a different XML document to look through in the next one, and a lot of cool, exciting things to look forward to. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. So until then, bye!